This show is in partnership with the Shine with Joy Foundation. With Shine, your generosity will fuel their mission of empowering Black women in STEM, improving maternal healthcare equity, and spreading joy through yoga and community programs. You can donate today on shinewithjoy.com and help make tomorrow a better place. Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful people, and welcome to another episode of Art of the Beholder, a show dedicated to all things eclectic in the world of art. I'm your host, Novo, and today we're going to be talking about art in a variety of mediums, actually, by sitting down with artist Penny Slinger. Ms. Slinger is a British multimedia artist known for her pioneering work in surrealist, feminist, collage, and erotic body imagery in the late 60s and 70s. Her career spans a number of mediums: photography, film, sculpture, and performance, often centered on the body as a site of power, myth, and transformation. Today, she's widely recognized as a visionary who helped reshape the visual language of female sexuality and identity in contemporary art. And today, guys, she's sitting down with us to talk shop. So please give a warm welcome to Miss Penny Slinger. Penny, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here.
I am very, very excited to sit down with you today because we didn't talk about this backstage, but surrealism is my absolute favorite art movement of all art history. So I am gonna do everything in my power to pick your brain and get to the the heart of your amazing pieces. I really fell in love with a lot of just all the kinds of surrealism that you were trying to capture with your pieces. Like, really spoke to me, and I was really excited to sit down with you today. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
You are very welcome. But before we dive into the pieces, I want let's get to know you a little better. So just tell us a little more about yourself. You know, how did you become the artist you are today?
Okay, well, before I start on that, let me first say how much I am enjoying this take that you have on presenting works here about art, because you're talking about the art of the beholder and giving that position the creative input that I think it really deserves. So I appreciate that positioning. And for myself, how did I become the artist I am today? Well, it's been a journey, but a journey where I think, in a sense, we come in fully designed and imprinted. We have this mission, we have this agenda, we have all the gifts, and all we have to do is get to know ourselves, be aware of what that is, and then find ways to unlock those gifts and to present them in the most cohesive and tangible way possible. So I think I did come in like that, fully fledged, because I know as a child I did art that was very precocious. At 4.5 years old, apparently, I had a very accomplished drawing, one that embarrassed my parents rather, but it was nevertheless very accomplished. They were very proud of it. And it went on from there. So I had, I would say, a natural ability to work, especially in the visual media, but it kind of spread over everything from words and music, although I've never learned how to play an instrument. So music has not been one of the things that I have really professed, but I hear music in my consciousness all the time. And I'm not talking about just repeating music I've heard, but new music too. So as much as I see things in the mind sky, I also hear things on the waves that connect us all. So my journey has been that of understanding who I was from a pretty young age, knowing that I wanted to be an artist just about as soon as I knew how to walk and talk, and then trying to take whatever path that I needed to realize myself in that role. And that started off with going to art school. And I went on a 2-year pre-diploma, as they called it, course at Farnham in England, College of Art, that's in Surrey. And then I went on to Chelsea College of Art to do my diploma course. And from there, I would say when I was at Chelsea, I did manage to find what I really loved and what I believed in, and to experiment with so many different media in a time when mixing media and experimenting with lots of different ones wasn't really on the agenda. But I decided to make it so. And from the time I emerged, I really was on my journey as an artist and have been practicing all kinds of facets and aspects of that ever since.
Do you remember what the piece was you made at 4 years old that embarrassed your family?
Well, my parents remembered it well because
Yeah.
apparently the drawing was a very well done drawing of my mother and father, but they were both stark naked and both
Oh.
fully sexually endowed. So, as
Oh.
I said, it was both a thrilling thing to share for them, but also not so thrilling because they were quite embarrassed by what the picture depicted. But as I mentioned in my documentary, I think that became rather a signpost of how it was going to be for them through my artistic career, both believing very much in my special talents, but also being quite, in shock and awe of my manifestations.
Yeah, it was destiny then, that you would evolve, that the cosmos would speak to you and that you were able to give us such gifts in terms of your artwork. And that you knew at such a young age that I have a vision for my work. I absolutely love that. So, you've been a professional artist for over 50 years. Is there any standout stories where you're like, how did that even happen? How did that come to be? Is there anything that you think about often to this very day?
Well, there are lots of stories along the way, of course, some wonderful and miraculous, and some just like or inspiringly challenging. But at the same time, let's look at something a little closer to current times. And
Sure.
the
Yeah.
amazing thing that happened to me in 2019 that came out of the blue, but was such a fulfilling and expansive experience to have. And that's when Maria Gracia Churi of Dior contacted me and asked me to basically transform the whole historical building of Dior in Paris because
How was that? Yeah.
they were going to have their last fashion show there, and the creative studio was going to move, and the whole building was going to be transformed into being this mega store, which did happen. But they wanted to honor and really mark this transition with the transformation of the place in a meaningful way. And Maria had been quite taken with my work in the series called An Exorcism, that
Yeah.
there was a book published in the 70s, and she had seen that book. And that was set in this old, wonderful mansion house in the countryside of England. So she saw the transformations that I'd done with that building in the photo collage. So she asked me to do something in that kind of style, but with total freedom to do whatever I envisioned.
How did it come out? What did you feel like the final product was like?
Oh, I was so happy and pleased because it really was the realization of a vision that I've had for a long time. Because I've always, right back to the early days, wanted to deliver experiences for people, not just a question of looking at my art. I said in one title for an interview, I like to give people experiences. So to give something that was truly immersive has always been very dear to my heart. And I'd had dreams right from when I was in my early 20s of transforming spaces. And the loft that I had in London, I did transform a little bit, and I painted my bedroom with the night sky covering the walls, coming up from a dusk into a dark night sky, and then the astrological configurations of the time of my birth painted on the sky above, and then a tent in the corner. But just to say, I was already looking at transforming space into a more magical reality. And so when I had this opportunity to make this big art piece in this whole building, it was something that I have envisioned things along that line for a long time so that people would come into a space, not just look at a space. And so I designed an alchemy where we would offer the building back to the elements, and that was earth, fire, air, water, and ether. And so all the salons were transformed, the ceilings, the walls, the floors, with these elements, and I composed them from photos that I'd taken on my travels and all over. And then in the halls, we had all these roots of trees from the photographs I'd taken, actually in Angkor Wat, where I had traveled just before that and taken all these photos of the trees embracing all these buildings, all this architecture embraced by all these roots. So these were now covering all these areas of this building, and was able to make three-dimensional pieces. A big tree of life came up through the middle of the building. We used 3D modeling to scan my model and create life-size images of her. So there was this incredible palette that I was able to work with and have all these people helping to manifest that. And that was a dream come true, but it was a way of spreading my wings, which now, I'm kind of flapping around in my own loft, thinking, when am I going to get a chance to really expand again, really fly? Because I did enjoy it, and it did come out, I say so myself, quite spectacularly.
Well, that is absolutely breathtaking. I love that. So, how big was your team then? Like hearing all that, like, was this dozens and dozens of people you're working with, or was it a small team?
It was, but the core team was myself and my partner, Duranda Su, who I collaborated with over many projects over the years. And he and I worked on everything together. And actually, the team that was there were several teams in Paris. One of the kind of photographic team who were helping putting all these templates, which we designed, into print for the walls, floors, ceilings. There were painters who actually joined up where in the decorations that were three-dimensional moldings on the walls of the historical building, we couldn't put the prints over those, but painters, a team of painters, so about 10 of those alone, came and painted to join the photographic image from one side of the molding to the other. So everything had that kind of attention to detail, so that it was a very refined and beautiful product. And the teams in Paris said, well, are you sending your files back to LA to your team there? And I said, no, actually, it's just Duran and myself doing all this. So we did take on a lot of work, but it was such a labor of love. And it was a delight to do and to make sure that it came out as perfectly as possible, because we wanted to create a magical space of transformation. And I think we did.
Oh, good answer. God, okay. Let's. I do want to go back in time a little bit before we and then circle back to the present. Were you able to collaborate with some of your surrealist colleagues? I remember hearing. I was able to watch your amazing documentary, Out of the Shadows. Guys, check it out. It's great. But I remember hearing names like Leonora Carrington, who we've done a full bio piece on our show. Max Ernst, Man Ray. Were you able to collaborate with some of these colleagues?
Leonora Carrington, I really didn't know very much about at the time. There wasn't an awful lot of information about the female surrealists back then in the 1960s. But, however, Max Ernst and Man Ray, I met both of them through the man who became my patron after that, but who I went to when I was studying for my thesis. His name is Sir Roland Penrose, and he'd written many books on people like Picasso and Man Ray and Max Ernst. And he was a friend. He was of the Surrealists. He was a Surrealist artist himself. He married to Lee Miller, who has now been seeing much more of the light of day for her photographic work. So I had met Max Ernst because Roland took me to meet him in Paris when I finished my thesis on him. And Man Ray I had met because he was doing an exhibition at the ICA in London, and Roland took me to meet him there. So both of those icons, but very especially Max Ernst, were absolutely seminal in my development as a surrealist artist. And it was Max Ernst that I wrote my thesis on after searching through the annals of art history to find that sweet spot where I could find the way the human form was used in a symbolic way and a magical way, but somewhere closer to our time and culture than examples I was seeing in ancient art from the East, for instance. So this was the place that I hit when I saw the collage books of Max Ernst and realized that collage could be a way of recreating reality in a way where you could actually depict your dreams, of rearranging parts of our known world, but in a way that would conform to another set of rules, which were magical and revolutionary, and that it could all look seamless, and that collage didn't have to show where the edges were and the cuts were made. And this was a huge aha moment for me when I found this, and that's why I wrote my thesis on him. My first book, 50% The Visible Woman, was done as a tribute to him and actually manifested in the time when I was working on the thesis. And I also made one of my short early films as an animation on all the research material I was doing for the Max Ernst project. So I felt that I didn't want to just give a written answer. I wanted to actually show how much he inspired me by manifesting works of my own as a tribute.
That's an excellent segue to talking process. I love talking process with my guests, with all the different kinds of artists, and I think we could easily go with a stock like, where do your ideas start? Where do your ideas usually come from? But let's actually start with surrealism. Why surrealism?
Surrealism offers you a toolkit, and this toolkit is one that is very suitable to use for, as the surrealists did, to probe the subconscious and the unconscious, the world of dreams. And I like that it rearranges the known world. And surrealists often do use representational kind of imagery, recognizable imagery rather than abstract imagery, because they're dealing with these iconic and archetypal images that are kind of retrofit around what we know, say, a human being to look like. But then from a surrealist point of view, that human being can be rearranged and reorganized to now, have an animal head or bird's feet, or be stepping out of a picture as if there was no separation between art and reality. And I particularly like photographic realism in things, something that you can really recognize what it is. But then if you either, cut it up or juxtapose it, if you reform it with something else, again, recognizable, you're creating this third thing, this other magical new entity. And this you can do with everything if you use the surrealist approach. So I just fell in love with it and enjoyed it because I knew, looking through the history of art, that I loved the human form, and particularly the female form, and how central it was as a muse to art across the ages and cultures. And yet, it was often through a male lens, which is why I decided to take myself as my own subject matter, because I wanted to see myself from the inside out rather than the outside in. And so I could be it and show it from a position of that recognition. And surrealism really does give you gives you permission to turn the inside out, gives you permission to take something from somewhere and something else from somewhere completely different, and then put them together in a new space that you've created. And hopefully, when you create a new space or open up a new crack, then that's an opportunity for different ways of thinking, different ways of seeing, different ways of feeling from that frisson, from that to enter in. And so I see surrealism as a mode as being a great opener of doors into your own psyche by reflecting in the mirror that surrealism holds up for you.
Do you feel like you found yourself then through the work? Do you feel like you truly know Penny Slinger now?
Oh, who can ever truly know the great mystery? I, I know as much as I can at any moment. I am in constant research of the nature of self because it's one of the first principles of any kind of spiritual path, and whether we like it or not, we are on a human spiritual path while our spirit is embodied in the flesh. So this process of self-reflection and self-knowing and that path, artists, I think, are really documenting the path, but then getting to the destination. I mean, what is that destination? Who is self when we finally meet them? And you think of the nature of the bigger self in the sense of spiritual beings. They are always bigger. So you're never going to reach that. But in that aspiration, in that reaching, that's where you can leave signposts along the way. And through that, if I can be as absolutely candid and ruthless as possible with that process, then I feel confident that I will reach to universal truths and that will resonate with others. And they will therefore be able to find their own reflection in this mirror pool.
Then do you feel like the journey is more important than the finish line?
Well, we don't know the finish line, do we? So that finish line is very ineffable. And I believe the spirit is incarnated in flesh and that doesn't finish being itself as a spirit when the flesh falls away. So how can we know the finish? How can we know that final destination?
We all get to an end with our pieces, right? There's always a final product to show the world. Is the journey to creating the piece and finding yourself through the piece more important or as important than the final destination?
No, not when you're talking about an artwork. You want to try and make that artwork as powerful and potent a glyph of all that journey. And, like, damn the journey. Let's see if it actually manifests in the energy of the finished artwork. So, but to balance that, I will say that I have tried to develop an integrity through the whole process, in the sense that I called my biography My Life as Art. And I'm a little bit over this old cliche of seeing the artists, they can have this terrible life and they're suffering in their garret and then they're producing this wonderful work. And so
right, only the tortured artists make good.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's so much bullshit. And I'm so fed up with
Couldn't agree
that
more.
excuse. So I'm trying to bring together all these to try and live one's whole life as one expanded mandala, one's expanded canvas. And then you're making these totemic offerings of your actual artworks along the way in this process. And that it is part of one integrated field of understanding the art of life and of being that and fully participating and then fully contributing by bringing your best to everything that you actually present and offer to the world.
Is there any other cliches or stereotypes you want to break open? Because I hate that one too. I think perfectly sane, level-headed, individuals, men, women, they, them, doesn't matter. You can make great work on from all sides of the spectrum.
And I think actually at this point in time, I'm looking for the art world is going through a little bit of a crisis, and
what kind?
Let's dig in economically there. As far as I can see from the current reports, and so that's a little bit of a reshuffling. And if I had my say, I would be very happy for art, to fine art. I mean, there's all kinds of applications of art in all kinds of different ways, and I love it all and support them all. But when it comes to the creation of world of fine art, I would really love it to be taken away from the field of commerce because it's
Okay.
become very embedded in all of that.
Oh yeah.
But then it demands to have like a next level of a new kind of patronage. I think we
Mm.
need to bring patronage back in a new form that will fully support culture.
What do you mean patronage? Kind of elaborate.
Artists' projects being supported, artists and their projects being supported
Ah,
by some of the funds that are around
I
in
see.
the
Yeah, we don't
society.
we don't have that as much anymore for
We
sure.
don't at all, really.
Yeah,
We have a
yeah.
little bit, but it's
Little
very
bit at the
minor.
top.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So then everything goes into this world of investment and commerce and all of that. And I think in the end, that's not really the healthiest place for it.
And do you think that dilutes the work?
The commerce side,
Do you think that dilutes the work because sometimes artists can be so focused on the final product being profitable or things like
oh,
that, and
yeah,
so
no,
the
it's
audience
terrible.
is, yeah,
It's terrible to have it.
the audience becomes no longer near the bottom of the list; it becomes to the top of the list, and we kind of get this formulaic, easy to digest, digest things. No one's pushing any limits anymore, and that's why I was very excited to talk with you today because you've never done that really. So,
No.
which is a perfect segue to let's talk about your pieces now. So you have, my God, this was a little hard to research your case because you have such a breadth of work. You've already mentioned some of them. Let's give them some love again. 50% the Visible Woman and Exorcism. I don't think we've mentioned yet the other side of the Underneath, all the way to more recent outings like My Body in a Box.
Right.
So as your years as an artist, what would be a good entry level point to getting into some of your work? Where do you point people to most?
That's a good question. I tend to hope that people will maybe arrive at it by seeing something and being attracted to it. And that can be from anywhere in the whole arc of my creativity. Because as I was saying earlier, I do believe that I was fully on my path from when I was 21. So it's not as if that really has, changed so much. I've taken on different projects and expressed in different ways that I felt are appropriate to those projects. But basically, my thrust, my vision, my mission as an artist was
Yeah.
known right back then. So I'd probably say, take a look at 50% The Visible Woman, because that was my first book, and we could do something chronologically like that. But otherwise, I just like people to maybe come across something that speaks to them and connects to them, because that to me is why people should want to have art, because it speaks to them. When I
Amen.
was living in the Caribbean, I had much more of that really than I had in the world of the more cultured fine art, etc.,
Yeah.
with paintings that I did there. And I did a whole series resurrecting the just about extinct, and certainly in pure blood in that part of the world, Arawak Indians who lived there for thousands of years. When I painted all these pieces, I presented them in the islands, and so many of the local people who had never in their lives bought art before, and these were thousands of dollars, it wasn't like a little thing, would come back to the gallery and they say, I've got to have this piece. It's
Yeah.
coming to me in my dreams. It's speaking to me. I just have to have it. And so for me, it was very gratifying. Those who lived on the island who bought those pieces, because now they grace the walls of the people who are living there in the place where these Indians used to live. They now have been given pride of place once more, and I feel gratified by that.
Excellent. Okay. For the good people that may not know, so just to give you an idea of what some of her pieces, some of the imagery include. So we have concepts of sexuality, eroticism, femininity, mysticism, and of course, surrealism, as already discussed. Do you feel like you've said all you wanted to say with your work over the years, or do you feel like maybe there's a lot more to still say?
Oh my goodness, how could one? ever say everything there is to say about such rich, deep, amazingly timeless and wonderful subjects. So
Yeah.
I'll say as much as I can in the time that I'm given and while I'm able. But
Take your time. We'll go long. No,
I'm
I'm
talking
loving
about
I'm loving hearing this. So
I'm talking about my life that
yeah,
I'll
we'll go real
articulate.
long. Let's just talk for hours.
I'll articulate in my work as much as I can while I'm here and able to do it. But it's not like that is exhaustive by any means, because all these are rich veins. And if you think of the field of potential, which is something I'm also very interested in that we're able to live out and express our full potential, that the potential for variety and variation and layers and aspects and different nuance on any given rich field. You're talking about eroticism, about surrealism, all these things. That is an endlessly rich, deep resource and pool that has no bottom.
I'm looking at your pieces now, and I'm a little biased, as as already stated. I'm Surrealism is my favorite art movement of all time. I love your pieces very much. It's easy to love a lot of your work. You have famously said that you made yourself your own muse. And because of that, you would put yourself into a lot of these pieces. And a lot of these pieces include very tasteful forms of nudity and nudes and things like that. So I have to ask, Miss Penny Slinger, you seem courageous, fearless in a lot of your pieces that include some of these imagery. Was there ever a time where you were anxious, scared to come out that other side, to finish the product, show the world, and really have no idea how people were going to react?
No, I wasn't scared at all. I
Okay.
was emboldened because I felt this is what I was meant to be doing. And I'd felt at that time, we're in a very different time now in a lot of ways, but at that time, women I thought really had the rough end of the stick when it came to
You
something
guys still
like,
do, honestly. Like
right. But
we have a long way to go.
even, yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. In some ways, because we're still a work in progress here, which has its going forward and then it has some going back again, it seems. But growing up in England, there was a common, what I can clearly now call misconception, that
Yeah.
women really didn't actually take pleasure in sex and it was just something they did for the men, and there was no claiming of the right to pleasure that we as women should have. So, as the women's liberation movement was coming along, the main thrust of that was getting the political rights and having the same rights as men and all of those kind of things, which are all very valid. But for me, I felt my part of that liberation of the feminine was in allowing woman to claim her right to her
Mm.
own pleasure and her right to be the subject of her own erotic encounters, not somebody else's object. It was for her to be able to manifest herself in the fullest way she could, to have as much joy and pleasure in being in a body and the joys of the flesh that go with that, which we've been so inhibited from because of all this guilt and shame which has been imprinted on us, which really has no place. I disagree with, original sin totally, in the sense
Mm.
that I think it's a garden of original innocence, and that's what we want to go back to. So, in the whole showing of my body, that's obviously a complex and layered thing, and not just my own, but other women too. But certainly, let's take me as prime example, because I've also never really been willing to ask anyone else to do something I wouldn't do myself.
Mm.
So that's why I felt I could be more ruthless with my own image. And plus, I know myself the best, so I could use that very clearly, my own body and my own naked self, because I'm trying to represent something of a naked truth and take off all these other overlays that don't really belong there, that make us feel, as I say, shameful about our natural state of being and our own resonance with ecstatic feelings and all of these things which should be our birthright, but which have been culturally denied to us, that we need to reclaim. So, but also by feeling that if I can put that out and show that, as you say, brave enough to do that, that kind of sets up a standing wave for others who want to step into their own power, but just needed a bit of encouragement that they can see that and own it for themselves in their own way, in their unique style and fashion. Each can claim those things for themselves, knowing that there has been a trailblazer and that she's still going and that she made it through and that it has some rhyme and reason to it to be able to self manifest and to be all that you can be rather than some rather, pale example that wants to conform to social morals.
Do you not feel like it's brave? Obviously from an audience standpoint, or a critic's standpoint, when we're like from the outside looking in, we're looking at your pieces. Of course, that was some of my first thoughts. Is like, wow, this is so brave, this is so courageous. But hearing you talk about it, it's almost like, well, I don't. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Of course, you may not feel that way. That it's just something you felt like you had to do to get these pieces out of your mind and into the world, maybe?
I do think it was brave, but I did enjoy being brave, and I felt that was called my calling to do so. So
Yeah. So it's
it was
both.
yes. So, and I took pleasure also in shocking people out of their complacency and status quo. That to me was enjoyable to do that, and even if the reactions were, not that they liked it particularly, well, so be it. I haven't liked how we've been treated as women all this time, so I trying to stir it up a bit.
Absolutely, and that begs the question of, I mean, you laid such a groundwork for everything that came after you. You were a trailblazer, and how were the reactions back then as compared to now? And do you feel like we've actually? It is relative, we have, like I said, there's a long way to go. It is better, but do you still feel like it's getting closer to this dream of yours, or do we still have so much more work to do?
Well, where I can see things are evolving and getting closer is that now we have so many, especially young women artists, who are expressing themselves through their body and through their nakedness and using that not as a means to titillate men or to get any of those kind of favors, but doing
It's
it
part of the work.
as an expression of themselves, as their
Yeah.
own art. And
Yeah.
that just wasn't happening back then. So this, I can say, is definitely something that is a positive sign in this reclamation that we're trying to do. But in terms of how things go in political climates, as I was mentioning before, it's, you go one way and then you go another. So I did think that we were making progress, but now things look a little shaky again. And so we just have to keep on in the direction that we know is right. And I am absolutely positive, beyond any shadow of doubt, that it is the liberation of the feminine and the reclaiming of the feminine in men and women alike that hold the answer to not only our evolution but our survival as a race. So I think it's absolutely crucial that those feminine qualities, even though dividing between genders in, as such is just an overlay, really, because in the end it's all one. And
Mhm.
the vision of the sacred is a united being, which is beyond gender. And I believe we in ourselves are made up of male and female elements. And that's the kind of magic formula behind all creativity. It's our male and female within coming together to join, be ecstatic, and create this child in the form of artwork. So all of that, I think, is coded into what needs to come forward here. So no matter how things may look, that's the essence of what I think we need to hold moving forward to keep the flame of hope alive.
My God, you have the best answers. Let's talk about the future now. Are you working on anything currently, presently? is what is Penny Slinger's next project?
Well, currently I'm working on just completing a new oracle. This will be the third oracle I've created. The first one was called the Secret Dakini Oracle, which came out in the late 70s with US Games and Systems. And then it was republished in the beginning of the 2000s as the Tantric Dakini Oracle. But that one's been out around in use. And then I created another oracle system, a more developed version of that, fully personifying all the energies, and put that online in 2010, but that hasn't come out as a published item yet. But right now, I've just completed a collaboration with AI on another oracle, and this one is the Animal Dakini Oracle, and it has 64 cards with different animal, bird, creature archetypes, and that's the project I'm just winding up. And then an ongoing project is one called My Body, which I've been working on for a few years, and it has various subsects, of which My Body project is about using myself as my own muse at this point in my life to transmit the body as the body of experience and the holder of these different kind of experiences that it's had, much as when I discovered tantric art in the early 70s, and I saw these images of chakra men and women, where you have the body with all the chakras, the energy centers depicted on the body, and then the different deities that inhabit, or energy forms that inhabit these different centers. It's showing the body as a temple, the body as a seat of wisdom and experience. And so I'm wanting to do that with my own body in all these different permutations. So that's ongoing. And then the future, I have been working on something for the last year and a half, which I'm ongoing with, which is to do with my whole archives and legacy, and feeling how important it is to leave an articulate blueprint in the form of my life as art and all the facets that it's had. And I have a big overriding vision for that, if I can get support for it, to realize it, of both a physical housing of the archives, and I have quite a lot of important things, not only the papers and the photos and the videotapes and all that, but I also have costumes which have been part of my palette while I've been doing video work, and boxes full of all the collage clippings. I mean, so many different things that will make a really rich and wonderful archival adventure that could be explored in so many different ways by different people going into the future, coupled with an online cyber presence of this whole presentation of all the different rooms of my building, my temple, my museum of art that I'm leaving, that people could travel through and access and find the archives, like behind the scenes of the paintings that would be displayed in the different spaces, so that one could have the whole journey rather than just the different parts, and be put together and integrated. Because as I've been working on it, it's been such a revelatory experience of seeing the interconnectedness of all the things, and how something I did 50 years ago sparked something that happened just last month, and how all these things work together. So it's, I think, an important blueprint, and it's also much more holistic than the normal linear way that archives are presented. And I think we need to expand into this new way, which is much more feminine, and help us create lineage in the true sense that will ground us, because there's so much instant gratification culture now with all of the social media, that we need these threads of connection which have breadth and depth and endurance, and that's what I'd like to create.
It sounds like we need a Penny Slinger museum. Would you be open to that?
Absolutely, this would be like a foundation that would then have its form in a physical museum, and one in on online. So you'd have both dimensions of it all connected together, and it would be hopefully too, the basis of community and inspire other connected works of art that could then become part of this whole ecosystem.
What I love about that idea is, I feel like your pieces there's a through line. There's a distinct penny slinger look and feel, and to your point of calling it an experience, I love that. I feel like that's a perfect word for how to kind of interact with your pieces. It is an experience, and because of that, I've learned that your audience has some of the most fascinating adjectives to describe your work. And one thing that really stuck out to me was someone said that Penny Slinger's art, there's a profound sadness to it. But I don't feel that way when I look at your pieces. There's definitely the surreal, obviously. There's a darkness, but not necessarily a sadness, and art is open to interpretation, of course. Was Penny Slinger ever truly sad? Do you feel like that came out in your work, or is this just someone seeing themselves in your work?
Oh, yes, well spotted. That was my first reaction when I let that sink in, is that, looking into the mirror of the work, it tapped into some sadness that that person held themselves. And so that's what came into focus and into the forefront of their experience. But that's all fine because I am trying in my work to work with all the emotions and feelings, the light and the dark, to accept and own all of it. And in the journey of the book called An Exorcism, that is a profound death and rebirth. And in that, I'm trying to depict psychological states in an image. And so sadness was definitely in there. There's a chapter called Perpetual Loss, where I feel deserted by the man in my life and cut off by the woman in my life. And it's that feeling of loss and that deep sadness I try to nakedly depict and express, so that she would be definitely right in feeling that in that situation. However, it's not a pervading flavor that permeates all my work. And so, depending on what I'm approaching at the time, that would come to the fore. But I tend to have, I would say, much more of a there's a humor with which I approach everything. And from a surrealist point of view, it's that kind of irony and double entendre. And I use that a lot in all the titling of my work and feel that those titles are intrinsic to the nature of the work because they're holding this kind of paradox. But in all that, when one's got, from a tantric point of view too, it's not about detachment, it's about feeling everything, but then, and having that passionate encounter with life and with all your feelings, but then through that being able to balance, like for instance, balancing passion with compassion, so that the complexion of that feeling gets refined. And that's the alchemy of self, which is what I'm involved in and what I hope to help nudge others into their own journey of their own self alchemy, because it's taking our base material and it's firing it in the life's experiences, letting that fire turn you into that pure gold of your shining heart and spirit. So that's the path.
If I may, I would love to add to some of these amazing adjectives of your work. For me personally, I would call your pieces this. There is a provocative horror to them, not the kind of horror that we're used to in films, but a kind of horror that is the unknown. And there's an alluring, there's a gravitas, there's a gravity to your pieces where I feel how when you were talking about how people were like, I'm dreaming about this piece, I want this piece. Like I kind of feel that way where I'm like, I want to see more, I want to see the next one, I want to see what else is this mind coming up with. And so that's why I for some reason that was what was conjured in my mind, was this provocative horror of like, there's a dark scary room, but I want to explore it, I want to walk into that room. And I urge everyone listening to walk into that room. So if someone wanted to support your work, help you donate to your work, help collaborate, and give you more opportunities to build on your vision, what's the best way for people to do that?
Well, I haven't got an entity set up, like I'm not on GoFundMe or Patreon or anything like that right now, but I'm very easy to reach through, like, probably the easiest way is through Instagram, where I'm just Penny Slinger as one word. And people can send me a message and connect, and then we can look at what particular way they feel, whether you want to collaborate, whether you want to buy some art, whether you want to help co-create this bigger vision. We can discuss anything. I'm very open and available to connect with people, because I feel that although this is my journey, it's somehow much more to do with what I feel is up for us collectively. That it's a healthy thing to be collaborating now. It's a healthy imprint to bring this way of looking at things from, as I say, a more feminine perspective that is going to help the good of all. So, that's really where it's at. And I know that there are those beings out there who have similar thoughts and intentions, and we don't want to be divided and ruled. We want to be able to get together and collectively bring in this other tributary which can make waves.
Absolutely. Gosh, a woman after my own heart. Penny, I thank you so much for sitting down with us today. This has been one of my favorite chats of them all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Novo. It's been so great talking to you and feeling your energy and your spirit too. So I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Guys, thank you for listening as well. As always, that was Penny Slinger. Again, if you want to check out her work, buy her work, collaborate, check her out on Instagram. She has a website. Let me spell it out for you, good people. So that's PennySlinger, Penny Slinger. Check her out. And if you like that, of course, you can check us out at novodayproductions.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, do all the things. You know what to do, guys. It's internet etiquette. I don't have to tell you. You can follow us at _Novo_day, day is DE, and at AOTB podcast and AOTB.podcast. One has a dot, one has no dot. Easy. And if you'd like to sponsor our little love child or be on the show, you can always reach out to us at novodayproductions@gmail.com. So until next time, guys, you know what to do. Be good to each other, and as always, good luck and Godspeed. We love you.
Art of the Beholder is brought to you by Novo Day Productions. Written, directed, produced, and edited by Novo Day and the NDP Collective. Starring Philip Church of philipchurch.com. That's Philip with one L. Music by A Company. Instagram handle A_CO_music_. Logo designed by Tom Justice of thejusticecompany.com. JESTUS. All rights reserved. Thank you again for listening.